In this video, you're going to be learning how to divide polynomials using long division and synthetic division. So, long time ago, you learned how to do long division using numbers. So, for example, you're figuring out how many times does 2 go into 64. So, you would say 2 goes into 6 3 times. 3 times 2 is 6. So, you subtract, you get 0, bring down the 4. 2 goes into 4 twice. 2 times 2 is 4. And then you subtract and you get a remainder of 0. So your answer would be 32. Now in this case, you would do the same thing. 3 goes into 8 twice. 2 times 3 is 6. You subtract, you get 2, bring down the 2. 3 goes into 22 7 times. 7, well, not completely, but it's the closest it can come to. 3 goes into 22 7 times. That would give you 21. And you subtract, you would get a remainder. And so the way you would write it is your answer would be 27 plus your remainder over the divisor. So you could write like that, or you would say it would be 27 and 1/3 would be your answer. Well, now you're going to learn how to actually divide with variables. So here we go. The divisor is x, and we want to know how many times does x go into 6x squared. So first, think if there's any constants. x goes into 6x squared, obviously 6 times, because you need to figure out what the constant is. How many times does 1, basically 1x, how many times does 1 go into 6? 6. And then how many times does x go into x squared? It goes into it 1 time. Because you already have 1x, you need it to go into 2 x's, so you would have 1. So 6x times x is 6x squared, and then when you subtract, you get a remainder of 0. So your answer would be 6x. Okay, now we are going to do long division with longer polynomials. So here we go. How many times does x go into x cubed? You have 1x, you want to know how many times it goes into 3x's, so it's going to go in twice, because x times x squared gives you x cubed. You put it over the same coefficient. So x squared times -1 is a negative x squared. X squared times x is x cubed. But don't forget, you are subtracting every time you do this. So when you do that, you've got to change the signs. So this is going to become a negative, and this is actually going to become a positive. X cubed minus x cubed go away. 2x squared plus x squared gives me a 3x squared, and I'm going to bring down my next term. X times what gives me 3x squared? Well, the coefficient in front of x is a 1. 1 times what gives me 3? 3. And then x times what gives me x squared? X. So now 3x times 1 is a negative 3x. 3x times x is a 3x squared. Now, don't forget though, you are subtracting that from the previous one. So you have to change the signs. So when I distribute this negative, this becomes a negative, and this becomes a positive. 3x squared minus 3x squared go away. They cancel each other out. Negative x and 3x give me a positive 2x. And now I bring down my last term. If I haven't lost you yet, just bear with me. 1x goes into 2x how many times? Well, 1 times 2 gives me 2. So 2 times 1 is a negative 2. 2 times x is 2x. And then don't forget, we need to subtract that expression from the previous one. And so when we do that, we got to change the sign. So this becomes negative, and this becomes a positive. 2x minus 2x gives me 0. Negative 2 and positive 2 also give me 0. So they have a remainder of 0. So the final answer to this is going to be x squared plus 3x plus 2. Okay, if I lost any of you, it is okay because there is actually a much, much, much easier way. And it is called synthetic division. And here's how you do it. First, you create a shelf. And then you're going to write the coefficients of each of these terms. So the coefficient of this one is a 3. The coefficient of the next term is a -4. Next is a 2. And the next is a -1. And then you're going to draw a line. And here is what you do. You're going to take your divisor and you're going to set it equal to 0. And you'll get x equals -1. Put that number on the shelf. Basically, it's going to be the opposite sign of that, but still, just stay with me. Or if you're not sure, just set it equal to 0. And now here's what you do. The first number you automatically bring down. Bring down the 3. And you're going to multiply. -1 times 3 is -3. And now add. -4 and -3 give me -7. And multiply. -1 times -7 is a +7. And add. 7 plus 2 is 9. And multiply. -1 times 9 is a -9. And add. -1 and -9 give you a -10. This last number, put a box around it. That is your remainder. Now, to figure out what these other numbers are, here's what you do. The first number is your constant. The second number is your coefficient in front of x. Your third number is your coefficient in front of x squared. If you had more numbers to the left, then it would have been coefficient in front of x cubed, x to the 4th, blah, blah, blah. So to write the answer to this, if you were to divide this by x plus 1, then your answer is going to be a 3x squared minus 7x plus 9, and then your remainder, minus 10 over your divisor, would be your final answer. So, in case I lost you, let's do it again. First, shelf. Coefficients. The coefficient of x to the 4th is a 2. The coefficient of x cubed is a -1. If you notice there is no x squared, you have to put a placeholder. You have to put a placeholder of a 0 because it's technically 0 times x squared. And then the coefficient of x is 2, and the coefficient of your constant is -1. Now you're going to take your divisor, set it equal to 0, or basically take the opposite sign. X minus 3 means that x equals 3 is the possible 0. So what you're going to do is bring down your 2. Always bring down that first number. And then you're going to multiply, add. So 3 times 2 is 6. -1 and 6 add to give you 5. 3 times 5 is 15. Add. 0 plus 15 is 15. Now multiply. 3 times 15 is 45. 45 plus 2 is 47. 3 times 47 is 141. Yes. And then add. -1 and 141 give you a positive 140. That last number, again, always put a box around it. That is your remainder. And then again, starting with the next number, it is your constant. The next number is your coefficient in front of x. The next number is your coefficient in front of x squared. The next number is your coefficient in front of x cubed. So your final answer is going to be 2x cubed plus 5x squared plus 15x plus 47. And because we have a remainder, you put your remainder over your divisor, which is x minus 3. And that is your answer. There is something called the remainder theorem. And what it's basically doing is it's saying they want to know, is x minus 3 a factor of this function? So basically, the answer is going to be yes if you have a remainder of 0. Yes if the remainder equals 0, if the remainder is 0. So the way we're going to figure this out is we are actually going to do synthetic division. So the coefficient in front of this was 1, coefficient in front of this is -7, coefficient in front of x is 15, the coefficient of the constant is -9. If x minus 3 is a factor, then x equals 3 is what you're going to put on the shelf. And now let's figure out what you get. Always, always, always bring down the first number. 3 times 1 is 3, and now you add. You get -4. 3 times -4 is -12. Add, you get 3. 3 times 3 is 9. Add, you get 0. And so therefore, since you get a 0 for the remainder, the answer is yes. X minus 3 is a factor. There's also one other thing that you can do with the remainder theorem. We want to know what is P of 4. Basically, we want to know if we plug in 4, what do we get? So you could put this in the calculator, but the one really cool thing about synthetic division is that you actually can do it there too. The shelf, 1, there is no x cubed, and so you put a 0. -5, 4, and 12. If you're looking for P of 4, this is where you don't take the opposite sign. If I was wanting to know if x minus 4 was a factor, then you would do the opposite sign. But here I want to know P of 4. So I'm actually going to put 4 in to the shelf. So bring down the 1. 4 times 1 is 4. 0 plus 4 is 4. 4 times 4 is 16. 16 and -5 is 11. 4 times 11 is 44. 44 and 4 give me 48. 4 times 48 is 192. And then add, and I will get 204. Your remainder is your answer. So if I was to actually plug this entire thing into the calculator, it would give me 204, which is very cool how a synthetic division helps you also find the answer when you're plugging in a number. So let's recap. We want to know what is x to the 4th plus 4x cubed minus x minus 4 divided by x minus 1. We want to know what expression gives you that. And then we want to know, is x plus 3 a factor of the following? So I would like for you to pause the video, try to work through these problems, and then resume when you're ready to see the answers. Okay, so in the first one, build a shelf, and then I'm going to put the coefficients in. There is no x squared, so you got to put a placeholder of 0. And then if x minus 1 gives me 0, then a positive 1 is what I'm going to put in the shelf. So I'm going to bring down a 1. 1 times 1 is 1. Add. 1 times 5 is 5. Add. 1 times 5 is 5. Add. 1 times 4 is 4. Add, and I get 0. So, put a box around the number, that is your remainder. This, don't forget, represents your constant. This represents the coefficient in front of x, which means that represents x squared, that represents x cubed. So your final answer is going to be 1x cubed plus 5x squared plus 5x plus 4. Now, we want to know, is x plus 3 a factor? So what we're going to do, again, we will do the shelf. The coefficient in front of x cubed is 1. There is no x squared. Put a placeholder. And then you have negative 10. And then you would have a negative 3. And if x plus 3 is the factor, then you would put negative 3 in the shelf. Always bring down the first number. It's 1. Negative 3 times 1 is negative 3. Add negative 3. Negative 3 times negative 3 is a positive 9. Add, you get negative 1. Negative 3 times negative 1 is a positive 3. Add, and you get 0. Therefore, since the remainder is 0, your answer is yes. It is a factor.